Interviews with Arizonans.
So I have a 4 and a 6-year-old, and if they, obviously we have huge ambitions for them, but I know that they're just ambitious little individuals. And at some point, if they ever wanted to embark on something as large as, say, climbing to the peak of Mount Kilimanjaro, what kind of advice would you give them?
I have some pretty standard advice I give to people. I say to them, when you've found your focus, never, ever quit, but pivot if you need to. So I might say to the kids, if I'm talking to them when they're 4 and 6, when you know what you want to do, don't let anybody ever stop you. And if something happens that doesn't work the way you want it to, then you just make a change and do something else, but keep on toward that goal.
Awesome. Let's welcome everybody to the conversation. Today, I have a really special treat for everybody. I am with a really amazing lady that's accomplished some incredible goals over the last couple of years, which is a big reason why a lot of people know you. But what we want to talk about is not only are you a world record holder 2 times now, but also a very influential person in the community, especially as it pertains to assisting underprivileged children. So we're going to talk about all of that today. So welcome Anne Lorimor to the conversation today.
So glad to be here with you.
Like I said, I think there's a lot of people in the community. You've been here for so long that I think that there's a lot of people in the community that know who you are. But for the people that don't, let's start with your story. You've been, first of all, you were telling me that you've been here in the Phoenix Valley, in Arizona since you were a child. So talk about how long, like kind of your experience or just how long you've lived here.
My family and I came to Arizona when I was very young, just before World War II. And I lived here quite a long time until I went off to boarding school and then to college. And then I came back again working for Red Cross here in the late 50s, early 60s. Went away and saw a lot of the world and did this and that. And finally, 35 years ago, I came back here. And it's been the longest I've ever lived anywhere in my life. And I really do feel like a Phoenician, even though I wasn't born here. Several of my family was. Some of my brothers and sisters were born here. So we were real Arizonans.
Yeah. You have an amazing story. So I want to make sure that people understand your story. And for you, I know that it all starts with your childhood. So tell people a little bit more about your childhood growing up. And then we'll kind of lead into all the way to fast forwarding all the way into today and what's, how your story has inspired you to do some of the things that you're doing today. Let me tell you about Phoenix Homes and Hotspots. This is my real estate YouTube channel, and it's the #1 real estate resource here in the state of Arizona, and here's why. Let's say you want to put your home on the market, and you contact a real estate agent. Most agents are going to do a pretty good job of marketing the home. The challenge is that's where it stops. Phoenix Homes and Hotspots picks up where the average agent left off. We not only do a phenomenal job marketing the home, but we're going to show through video on our YouTube channel, we're going to show the surrounding community, walking trails, community pools, bike paths, golf courses, whatever that might look like running through the community. But then we're also going to show the lifestyle around it. We're going to show all the local hotspots. Where are the best restaurants? Where's the best shopping? Where are you going to get groceries, gas? Where are the best schools located, and how are they rated near that particular community where you found the home you're looking for? So if you think of yourself as an out-of-state buyer moving into the area, they find your home online, they love the home, but they have no idea what the community or the hotspots or the lifestyle around that looks like, we tie it all together. No gimmicks. No, sell your home in X amount of hours. No, we have tens of thousands of buyers waiting to buy your home. This is not gimmicks. This is bulletproof real estate marketing. Also on Phoenix Homes and Hotspots, we talk about the cost of living in the area, pros and cons, and so much more. If you're watching this podcast on YouTube right now, click the top right-hand corner. That will take you to Phoenix Homes and Hotspots to check it out. Or if you're listening on one of the audio platforms, you can look in the description below, or you can go to youtube.com/Phoenix Homes and Hotspots. Check it out. Subscribe, smash the bell next to the subscribe button. That way we can notify you every time we create new popular videos right there on Phoenix Homes and Hotspots.
I would say that my chief passion is to help underserved kids find what they want in life and live lives they really love and then give back. And I'm sure that my own background led into that very greatly. When I was born, it was just at the beginning of the Great Depression. And there were quite a few times in my childhood when we were homeless. We one time traveled in a truck, which my father equipped like a prairie schooner with iron ribs and a canvas top, and we had a little homemade trailer that went along with it. And that was quite crowded with, I believe we had 4 adults and 6 children. And it was an interesting experience. But it does let me sort of feel that I know how the people who are homeless feel. We then had a period when we lived in a tent on the bare ground with no electricity or running water or telephone, anything like that. The thing that I really remember, though, that no matter how hard life was, there were always people that were kind, and we never lost hope. I joke about it sometimes. My mother did have a college education, and she planned for me to go to college, and they started a little fund for me. But when we were in New Mexico, when they were managing a home for orphans, home and school, we built the house with my college money. So all the rest of that time that never was there, I had to do it myself. But I did have a second grade teacher who paid my tuition at a boarding school in California. And I felt that that gave me a wonderful start, because I would not have been happy hanging around the house doing nothing. I wouldn't have done that, but I would have not been doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah. What was kind of the turning point? When I think a lot of people, when they think of homelessness, they almost think of just a complete lack of hope. And when there's a lack of hope, it's very hard to overcome that. What was I know that you had some really influential people around you. What was kind of the turning point where you started to go from, and not to say that you lost hope at any point, but just to say that that point where you started to turn it around and you actually saw that that your future was very bright, that you were going to have an exciting future.
As a young child, I always was curious about everything and interested in what was going on, and always figured that life was going to be interesting. And I will say that even when it was hardest, it was interesting. It might have been dull to other people, but to me it wasn't. What happened was I had wonderful teachers, almost all the way along, who had a great influence on me. As I said, the second grade teacher paid my way to boarding school, and then I had another wonderful teacher who, she's just amazing. I wrote recently in Storyworth that she was the most influential person in my life. She always encouraged me. One time she found some stories I'd written just on my own, because I like to write, and they were on my desk, and she read them, and she wrote across them, very good. They had right to look at your desk, but I didn't write it for anybody but me, and I was pleased that she liked it. And then she went with me when I went away to college back to Ohio, when I was old enough to go there. And it was nice to have someone, because I'd never taken long journeys alone. But still, I started very early taking care of kids. When my father and mother had an orphanage and children's home and school in New Mexico, rural New Mexico, I worked with the kids when I was just a little girl, 9 years old. I used to bathe them and feed them and give them their sunbaths and change them, do all the things that little kids have to have done. I was really proud when one of those kids came to visit me in Wisconsin a few years back. It was just nice. He had been my favorite, actually, although I tried to treat them all exactly alike. But I really cared about that. And my grandfather was also very, very helpful with children. I've said before that we're sort of a 3-generation or now almost 4-generation family of people that want to help kids. And my grandfather did take in 5 orphan children.
Wow.
And brought them up with the help of my grandmother and my aunt when the orphanage that he supported failed. And they became part of the family. They would come to our family reunions and everything else years later. And I always liked that. I just felt that people deserve a chance. When I was after that initial help from the teacher, I did the rest of my getting through school myself. I earned my own way with assistantships and scholarships and work and everything else. And I was a nanny for a professor when I was at Wisconsin in grad school. And those little kids, they were so incredibly bright. They had a room full of books, and I read to them every night. And beside that, they were just knowledgeable about things. And the little 3-year-old used to talk to me about Ferraris and Maseratis and Lamborghinis. And then I would go home during vacation, and my mother lived in a relatively poor area, and the people down the street, the mother and father and twins, lived in a house no bigger than the professor's living room. And I didn't see a single book in that house. Obviously, books are important to me.
Yeah.
And I felt, this isn't fair. These are bright little boys, and they don't know what opportunities are out there. So
Right.
that's what I started my organization for, the Larimar Child Empowerment Foundation, doing business as creating exciting futures.
Awesome. Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about that.
Good.
Yeah.
The idea being that you want to let kids know their options. Because if you are brought up truly poor with no hope, and you look at television, oh, sure, you see people do things, but it's a fairy tale.
Yeah.
But I can go there and I can say, hey, I was in your situation, and you can do what you want to do if you really are determined.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about your organization. So absolutely. So you're in college. What did you study in college?
I wanted to study creative writing that didn't exist. I went to Berkeley. That again took some work on my part, because in Cincinnati I'd been accepted by the University of Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. But when I went to go, even though I'd lived there a year, they said I wasn't a resident because my parents were not residents. And even though I'd been totally supporting myself, couldn't go.
Oh.
So, all right, you pivot.
Pivot, yeah, there you go.
So I went to nursing school, and I got myself a job, but always colleges in mind. And I'm working in Colorado Springs at Fort Carson as a nurse. And I met a fellow who had an extra catalog to Berkeley. And he said, that's a good school. And I thought, that is the only top school I could possibly afford, because as I recall, my tuition one semester there was $54.
Oh, wow.
But only if you're a resident.
Yeah.
So I took my brother and my sister, and we moved out to San Francisco a year early.
Okay.
So that then nobody could say I wasn't the resident.
Right.
I registered to vote and did all that stuff. And I was able to go to college there. And so I just kept on finding ways to get to college.
And what did you study? What did you have?
I wanted to study creative writing. They didn't have it. So
Yeah.
I did journalism.
Journalism. Okay.
Yes. But at the same time, I always believe in hedging your bets. So I was a nurse. So now I went ahead and got a degree in nursing.
Okay.
Same time, double major. So actually, if you want me to tell you what I worked my way through all these ways, I have a BA in, that's in nursing, and an AB in journalism. And I have a master's of public health in health education. And that wasn't enough, so I went off from then. I got my PhD in communications.
Wow.
That was at Wisconsin. That's where I had the professor's kids. And then finally, when I came back to Arizona, I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
So again, I started to go into social work because I knew there were a lot of people who did counseling as social work. As they'd closed it, I found out counseling was open, so I went there. You see, you have to pivot. And I did my master's in counseling, which gave me about the same opportunities as being a social worker.
Okay, so you graduate from college, and then you come back to Arizona? So from college...
You want some chronology geographically? All right.
Well, no. Well, I'm just saying from college, because I know that you've lived here a long time, so not so much geographically, but so kind of going from college and then leading up into today. How did you spend most of your years? Was it doing philanthropy?
I mean, always I volunteered.
Yes.
But I had to earn a living.
Yes.
And so what I did do, I tried for a job in New York, and they didn't want me. It was a writing job. And so then I ended up working for Red Cross. It was a really fascinating job where I trained their instructors. And also I got to do some disaster service with them, which was interesting. And I was headquartered in Phoenix.
Okay.
Back there. And that was the time in about the late 50s to early 60s. But that was not my end. I was doing this because I was on my way toward getting my PhD. I wanted to teach in college. And I applied to several places, and all of them accepted me. I was astonished, but they did. And I chose the one he had been the professor for my advisor at Berkeley. And so she'd certainly advised me to apply to that one, and they had a good communications program. So I did that, and then there wasn't any particular job that I found, and I worked for, I did work for Red Cross after that, I think, as well. I just always kept on the move, and finally I went overseas to just get my Spanish improved, and because there wasn't any job in teaching that I particularly wanted.
Yeah.
And while I was there, I was hired by East Texas State University, which is no longer there. It was in Commerce. And so I taught there a while. For 4 years, I went to Illinois for a while, then I went up to Washington for a while, and I went finally back to California, and I'm teaching. And then I just got really ill, and it was very hard. As a child, I never thought I was any different from anybody else. I could do whatever I wanted, but often you found that there were barriers. One of my professors at Berkeley said, "Oh, you could never teach anywhere except in a women's college, maybe." I mean, you weren't allowed, and that was not what I wanted.
Yeah.
So you just always, that's why I say the never, ever quit.
Yeah.
And I finally came back to Arizona then, after wandering around a while and becoming ill and not being able to teach anymore as I felt it. I started working for the state. And that was another thing that sort of prepared me to help kids. I used to inspect the outpatient clinics for kids as well as the inpatient facilities for them. I did others as well, but they were the ones that always interested me the most. So anyway, I traveled a lot. Anytime I could travel, between times I did. I went some time in Spain. I do have a certificate in Spanish studies from the University of Barcelona because I went over there for a while, and that was when I was hired to come back to Texas. Okay.
Very nice. So from there, when did you retire? I mean, when did you get to a point? So today, I'll tell everybody, you're 91 years old, which makes the things that you've accomplished just in the last 5 years really, really amazing. When did you get to a point where you said, okay, it's time to retire? And then what did that process, like, what did that process look like? Because you're such an active person. It's hard to imagine. I mean, in theory, you're not completely retired because you're still just so active with so many different things.
I will tell you something interesting, Todd. I have been busier since I retired. I was a workaholic. I used to work sometimes 90 hours, 68, 90-hour weeks. But since I retired, I've been even busier. The only thing is I have a little more flexibility in what I do now than I used to.
Yeah.
Now, volunteering, I started helping serve dinners with the Salvation Army when I was in Berkeley as an undergrad.
Okay.
And I've always tried to work with other organizations that help people. in my own organization, I help any kind of low-income kid or underserved kid, but particularly I focus on foster, homeless, and orphan children.
Okay.
Because I think they have very special challenges.
Yeah.
And what I want to do for them is show them their options, get them some tools to get where they want to go, encourage them a lot, and then really stress giving back, paying it forward.
Yeah, and we're going to, like I said, we're going to talk so much about that because I think that last part you said is I think that last part you said is really interesting, the paying it forward. So I want to dive into that in a little bit with you.
Well, I want to tell you some more then about some of the volunteer work I have done or the organizations I support in other ways.
Yeah, great.
One of my very most favorite prominent ones is Family Promise. Family Promise is an organization that helps the transitional homeless. Those are the ones I really focus on.
Yeah.
They work with various churches and people who they're just ordinary people, okay? They're living. Maybe they're living paycheck to paycheck, and one loses his job, or there's a catastrophic illness, and suddenly they're out in the street.
Yes.
So this organization sends them to various churches, keep them a week at a time, and they're given meals, and they're given some fun for the kids, and they're given an address. It helps to be able to say, this is my address, instead of by the second tree outside the city limits.
Yeah.
You know? And they also have access to computers and phones so that they can look for work.
Yeah.
And they do that. They stay at the church overnight, then they go over to the shelter where the Family Promise office is. And it's wonderful to see those people. I've been told at times that we've had about an 85% success rate of turning them around and getting them back into the mainstream.
Wow.
And I do that. I help prepare the meals. I'm not a cook, but I can make a beautiful salad. And I help serve them. And lots of times they have to have hosts that stay overnight. And I volunteer to do that very often. So that's one of my major projects.
Yeah.
Rosie's House is another one. I've supported them by going and also by monetarily as much as I could. They choose kids with talent who would not otherwise be able to fulfill that talent.
Okay.
And they're wonderful. When I first got ready to go overseas the first time, I talked about them, and I got them more donations than I got from my climb and my own cause.
Yeah.
They got pianos given them and everything else because of what I'd said.
Wow.
And I was glad. I had two nephews who went to Boys Ranch, and I certainly always supported them. We went back to see them graduate and that sort of thing. And boys and girls and big brothers, big sisters. I was a mentor myself with the health department here, mental health organization. And I had a little mentee that I had from the time she was 6 until she was 21. And we're still in touch. I see her on Facebook, and I send her a birthday greeting every year, you know.
Yeah.
It's good to see. I know that I gave her something. And, of course, you get a lot, too.
Yeah.
I said to that, I said, you learned some things from me, but I learned a lot of things from you, too.
Yeah. You just said something that just made this book pop into my head. So it's a children's book that we've given our kids, and just a book we've probably read to them more than any other book, and also one I've started to give as gifts to other parents or new parents that may be clients or whatever. But it's called Have You Filled a Bucket Today? And it basically says that, in order for my bucket to be full, I need to go around and fill other people's buckets, meaning that could be give a hug, show love, be kind, whatever that looks like, right? And so, but if I take from your bucket, then my bucket is empty. And so I don't know, something that you just said just really, brought that book to my mind, because that's something that we really talk to our kids about, is always, just that kindness and how for them to be happy, they need to make sure that they're fulfilling people around them as well. And so,
hanging in my living room is a little excerpt from a poem which said, "Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man."
Very nice.
Really resonates with me.
Yeah.
And you can. I mean, sometimes a small thing is a compliment or a smile, I think, can be so helpful. It's amazing how many people are discouraged, and they keep a brave face.
Yeah.
But if you can just do a little to make their day. I used to say, I wish that everyone that would meet me would go feeling better for having met me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we tend, another conversation, again, just things that you're saying that popped in my mind. I spoke with Amy Schwabenländer on the podcast, who runs the Human Services campus downtown, homeless campus down there. And I asked her, I asked her what people can do to help. And of course, we talked about donations and assisting and all that stuff. But one of the things that she said that I talk about a lot is she said, treat them like human beings. Ask them how they are. Ask them what they need. And so I think that's, again, I think you're making some points that are just really important for people to understand, because we tend to go through life day to day in our own little bubble sometimes. We're busy and we have things on our mind. But at the end of the day, you're right. You never know what somebody's going through. They don't have to be homeless. They could be anybody, and you just don't know what their day looks like. So, yeah.
I want to tell you, you reminded me of one of the kids. One of the things that I do in the organization is give scholarships. And there's CEO Space International. That's a business mentoring and educational organization.
Yeah.
And they have a special teen program called Teen Feast. And the kids go there for a week, and they learn networking and brainstorming, and they learn leadership and work on projects. And get to get entrepreneurship explained to them, things like that. I have taken 10 kids to that program.
Wow.
That's not a lot. Here's Child Help with 10.5 million kids that
Yeah.
they've helped over 50 years.
Yeah.
But there's also the saying, which I like very much, that he that saves one single life has saved the world entire. So I want to tell you about one of those scholars.
Yeah.
When we were having an orientation meeting, and I was terribly impressed because she came taking 3 buses to get there to attend this meeting.
Wow.
And I was pretty impressed. And she got there on time, and she was one of the ones accepted to go.
How old?
She was a teenager.
Teenager, okay.
They run from 13 to about 19.
Okay.
Those kids.
Okay.
Most of them are the upper teens, and she was probably, 17. Not certain about the age.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, we took them over. They were meeting in Las Vegas area that time, and I took 3 kids over there, and she was one of them. And she got a lot out of it, and we tried to make it fun for her. Kevin, who was my co-sponsor, took them out one evening to just play around Las Vegas, ride the roller coaster and do all those silly things.
Yeah.
And they enjoyed that, but they were good about their classes. I insisted on that. And, this is what you're here for. You're going to these.
Yeah.
And they didn't give me any trouble that way. And they fit in quite well. But what impressed me was when we came to the final graduation ceremony, they asked some of the kids to speak. And this girl got up there, and she told us that she had been planning to end it all. Mm. And going there gave her hope. Okay, I'm really impressed, and I'm so happy that we did that. But the thing was, it was real. When we did this interviews for the documentary that's coming out, she stood right there and she told the people, she said, if it weren't for Anne and her organization, I wouldn't be here.
Oh, wow.
She said, I had chosen my method, I'd chosen my time.
Oh.
But after that program and everything, I felt I had hope.
Yeah.
And so I felt well, let me tell you a little more about what she's done. She got married. She has a lovely little girl. Moves off to another state. Things don't go perfectly in life. Somehow the boy turned out not to be great. And there was violence, and she left him. And I guess I stress it's a male judge. Let him have temporary custody of the child. I mean, he was immature and probably dangerous, and it was terrible. But her friends rallied around, and she now has custody. She's moved back to Arizona. She has trained as a doula, and she also has 2 side businesses. She has a baking business, and she... I forget the other thing, what she's doing. But what I encourage her is she's a fabulous writer. She is an unrivaled ability to express herself in writing. So I said, keep writing, no matter what. Keep writing.
Yeah.
Keep writing. And so I'm really happy. And her background was horrendous. Her mother was, I think, bipolar. And she had a lot of husbands, and she was so controlling, she never kept one very long. And life was so chaotic that my scholar spent most of her time in foster homes. Well, she had a younger sister, and that sister became one of my other students and is also doing well. So I'm just so happy that I can see some things happening with them.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about your organization, and then we'll work into the climb that you did, the Mount Kilimanjaro. But you know what? Since we're talking about it, let's talk about your organization. So, what is creating exciting futures? I mean, how would you, if you were to tell somebody real quick in an elevator, hey, this is who we are? How would you describe your organization?
I would just say that our aim is to give underserved kids a hand up, not a handout.
I love that.
And I said again, I'll repeat, the idea is to show them their options. Because that's one of the major things with people that don't have a broad view. They don't know that they have options. I'm not a snob. I say, if somebody wants to be a plumber, that's wonderful. If he wants to be an electrician, we need them badly. But they shouldn't do it because their father did it. They need to know that there are opportunities for them. So we show them the options, then we help them find the tools, give them scholarships. I want to give to colleges eventually, give them contacts. I know a woman that helps people find scholarships, and that's what she does. Shows them how to present themselves to be accepted by college. We also had a little program from Toastmasters called Youth Toastmasters, because I think that if you can express yourself well and comfortably, no matter what you do in life, it's going to be helpful to you.
Yeah.
So we've had that program going on. I'm going to be sending some of the kids with scholarships to the film camp that Phoenix Film Society has.
Yeah.
They learn everything there, all the different parts, acting and producing and directing and editing and camera and sound, all of these things. And they learn leadership skills. I get kind of exercise sometimes when I'm talking.
Me too. I talk with my hands too. It's okay.
So I'm just saying that we give them as many viewpoints as we can, and I have people that I know that can be helpful to these kids. Shall I tell you about another one of my scholars?
Please.
This guy was brought to me by his big brother, who was an officer at banks that I have an interest in.
While you're talking, I'm just going to adjust your microphone just a little bit. So everybody bear with that little screechy sound you just heard. All right.
So when I started telling him about the kind of scholarships my organization offers, he thought that the boy might be a good fit. So he introduced us, but he told me that when he first told him about it, he said, I'm not going to win. My family never wins anything. We did accept him. His big brother told me that he was a little bit socially awkward. Well, I truly did not find that so true. Maybe he'd learned from his big brother, but he shook my hand very firmly, and he had good eye contact. Now, I was a little bit startled because he had his hair fixed in gold-tip braids that stuck out in every direction, and I wasn't very used to that, but unimportant. So he was accepted. And you probably know that many people nowadays are not very careful about their word, and they tend to be late and all this kind of thing. So we had to take him to Texas now. That's where the organization moved. So we did not want them to miss the plane. So what we did was we had a pizza party and an overnight at the home of one of the people on the board, so that we could get them all to early plane. I think it was 4 o'clock or some ridiculous thing like that anyway. So anyway, he was there 2 hours early. Well, they took it in stride. They just put him to work helping to get ready for the other kids.
Yeah.
When we got there, I was so proud. I had a wonderfully diverse group of scholars that time. I had 2 blacks, and then I had, an Asian Indian and a Polish American and an Hispanic descent, all in my group. And they just fit in beautifully with those kids. And as for him, he has been cooking since he was 6 years old. And his dream is to be a chef and have his own restaurant. So there, he brainstormed with 2 other kids a fusion restaurant. And the person that helped me set the organization up, who's a CEO Space member, was there, and she was very supportive of us. And she told them about grants that are available for essential services in poorer areas.
Uh-huh.
And I've been able to introduce him to a friend of mine who has opened several successful restaurants, and he actually gave me permission to give him his own personal phone number. And I've met several others in my Alliances membership who agreed to talk with him when the time comes. Right now, he's working in a restaurant and getting experience. About a year after he'd gone, his big brother called me and said, well, you know, he graduated college. He graduated high school. And I thought, well, turned out he was the first person in his family ever to graduate high school. The whole family was there watching him, and they were just so proud. And I just have such great hopes. He knows that there are things that he didn't even know existed before.
Yeah. How do you, so you said earlier, you defined the kind of the underprivileged or underserved kids as homeless, foster, and you mentioned...
Orphan. I said
orphan, okay.
Those are the ones I focus
yes,
on.
Correct.
Others who are of low income certainly are not turned away. But that's my focus because, again, I think they're probably the ones that have special challenges. And also, in my own background, the homeless, the foster, the orphan was always there.
So my question is this: how do you find them, or how do they find you? How does that process work? Where you have this organization designed to help these kids, give them scholarships, and again, your title says it all. To create that exciting future. How do you come together?
I work with any organization that's interested in kids. Another one that I have helped in the past was Hope and the Future, and that's aimed particularly at foster kids. There's Millet House over in Mesa. What she does is provide a community center for people who are talented and might not have the money. They have art exhibits, and she's a couple of kids she's recommended to me that I've had. And I've helped Rosie's House, as I said. I have not got recommendations yet, but I hope that I might for things I can do for them. And I just keep my ears open. I told you it was an officer at my bank that was a big brother. And I myself worked with youth at risk for a while. And so I hope that I'll get more from them. Any kind of the people that work, big brothers, big sisters. What's the other one that's so active with kids? Boys and Girls Club.
Boys and Girls Club. Okay.
Yes.
So
any of those people can give me recommendations, and also Family Promise.
I was going to say Family Promise, yeah.
Because they have a year-long program afterward, and so those kids I love to take because it gives them an opportunity to know things and learn things.
So they're referred to you from other organizations. A lot of times, other organizations come to you and say, "Hey, I have this kid that's interested in."
Mostly, I go to them and say, "I have this program.
I see.
Do you have someone that you could recommend?" And sometimes when they hear about it, they just say, "I got someone I know just be right for that." And so we do have a committee that reviews them and everything. They have to say why they want to come, and they have to be recommended then by that organization.
Okay.
And so I don't run a lot of things myself, but from Toastmasters, I'm expecting to get some review because of the Youth Toastmasters program that he did. And I went out and did some lectures for the diabetic kids club with another person from Toastmasters, just to let them know what it was that it could help them. Anything I can do to help kids, I want to do. And I still volunteer for some others I can't think of. Oh, and I forgot to tell you that I particularly like Family Promise because they're one of the few organizations for homeless people that take care of their pets.
Oh, that's interesting.
They told me that they'd have families come with an animal, and when they couldn't bring the animal, they just go back on the street.
Oh, interesting.
And so they have a setup where they're cages. It's not the most desirable, but they're there and they can visit them, and they have somebody on duty around the clock to take care of those animals.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm familiar, and I've actually been to Family Promise, but it was years. It was over a decade ago. I actually went to visit them, and I can't remember why now. But I didn't remember that about them, and you're right. That's a really important.
They didn't always have it, but they just saw that how important it was to the family. And animals can bring so much to you when you're down.
Yeah, for sure.
And I told you, my dog just was a wonderful training buddy. I had to get out and walk him every day, so it forced me to exercise.
Yeah.
And we both loved it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things. And I'm hoping time from Boys Ranch maybe, and there's Homeward Bound. There are other programs that I'm continually trying to make connections with, so that they will be kids that they know. Because I can't know everybody, but when they know somebody that they know what we have to offer, then often they can provide exactly the right recommendation.
Perfect. You said something earlier about we offer a hand up, not a handout. Why is that important?
Well, I have heard of 4-generation welfare families. Now, I happen to have heard of them in Chicago because at one time they were forcing people to, if they didn't have a high school education, to get a GED and to look for work. And I personally, I'm sorry, I think that's great. And I don't want to make people feel like, oh, it's all owed to me and I don't have to lift a finger and just, no. What you want to do, I want to help you do it so that you live a happy life, and that spreads joy to everybody.
Yeah.
You remember that saying from Thoreau, the majority of men lead lives of quiet desperation. I don't want that for my kids or any kid.
Yeah.
I want them to see that there is hope and there are opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. So you go to these organizations, and do you have... You've mentioned a couple different places and types of scholarships. You mentioned kind of culinary and a couple different things. How do you determine these scholarships? I'm trying to think how I want to ask this question, but the scholarships, how do you determine what type of kid you're looking for to fit the scholarship? In other words, it seems like you send them to different types of opportunities. Am I understanding that correctly?
The major one, as I started, was the Teen Feast at CEO Space. And from there, that's a week-long scholarship, and it lets them know more about what they want. The sister of that first girl I told you about, she came back and she said, well, I had thought of a dozen different opportunities of what I wanted to be, but I came back and I know I want to be in real estate. So I talked to several realtors, real estate people that I know, and they've agreed to talk with her and be her mentor.
Yeah.
And I ask your question again.
I'm just trying. So.
Oh, the kinds of scholarships.
Yeah, the types of scholarships, and so when you're out talking to these organizations, you say, "Hey, I have this particular scholarship to this. Do you have any?"
And I haven't got far with those other programs yet.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking that when I get some to CEO Space, there are people there that'll sponsor them sometimes.
I see.
And I know myself that for some of them, college is a thing, and I know a woman who helps them get college scholarship and also helps them apply in a way that they'll be accepted.
Yeah.
You need that kind of help. So I send people to specialists. In time, I'd like to be able to give scholarships to colleges, but also to technical schools. If that's what the kid wants, really. And this one person that helps with the scholarship, she does testing to let them see where they really would fit best.
Yeah. There's a lot of kids that have that need. I mean, there's an abundance of kids that have the need, but at the end of the day, you can only help so many with the scholarship. So when you go to these organizations and say, hey, I have this scholarship, how do you know which child fits that profile?
Well, I told you, they have to apply.
Yeah.
They get a recommendation, but then they have to say in certain words, just mainly saying what they would like to get from it, what they hope to do, that kind of thing. And then I have a review committee that goes over it.
So any of them can apply. At the end of the day, anybody can apply, and then it's through the process. We normally
ask somebody in the organization to recommend them. But I did have one that somebody recommended it just in a. So it was. I was out getting my education, and she heard about my organization. She said, "Oh, I have somebody to be perfect and wonderful for that." So we had her apply without any formal recommendation.
Yeah.
And she was someone that we took because we had the room for her. And
Okay.
I could do a lot more if I made more money, and that's what the climbs were for.
Yeah.
So you want to hear about those now?
Yes, we're going to talk about them. So before we do that, a couple more questions about the organization. Is it mostly Arizona kids you're helping, or are they from across the country? It sounds like it's mostly Arizona.
So far, it's been mostly Arizona.
Okay.
But if I got bigger, I'd want to help kids anywhere.
Yeah.
Because, they're the ones, but they've got to show that they mean something. That I told you, taking 3 buses to come to an orientation meeting and getting in there on time impressed me.
Yeah.
So if I see drive, then I'm more inclined to want to choose them as one that's helping. Sure, I wish I could help them all, but I can't.
And that's really what I was getting at
Yes.
earlier. You've said a few things that I think that it's so important. Not everybody, whether they're a child or an adult, in an unfortunate situation necessarily wants to help themselves.
Exactly, and they have to.
And that's why I really wanted to hear from your perspective the importance of hand up, not hand out, and some of the things that you've said, because at the end of the day, and that's why I was really trying to drill down on how do you choose these kids for the scholarships. And so you answered my question. Anybody can apply, but you want to see the application, but more importantly, the drive is really, really important. You want to see kids that you feel certain are going to overcome their situation because they have that drive.
Yes, there has to be drive. That same thing as I said, once you know where you want to go, never, ever quit.
Yeah, amazing.
And you have to have that. It won't happen. I met somebody at a restaurant that we went to, and she was saying, "Oh, she wanted to be a photographer, and she was a good waitress, but she wanted to be a photographer." And again, if somebody said something like that to me, I'd want to find a place to send them.
Yeah.
3 years later, nothing's different. You have to want to be open to opportunity and willing to pursue it. And I told you, both of my climbs I had to put off a year. Now, I didn't tell you why, but we'll talk about it if you want to.
Yeah, for sure.
And I didn't let it stop me. And I've had other people that say they're going to do it and they don't do. And you've got to follow up.
Yeah. There's the I don't know, I guess it's kind of the final component. I mean, if you were really taking your organization, you say, okay, you've now found the kids to go into the scholarship. You've put them through the scholarship and through the training. They've come out on the other side, and you've given 2 great examples of kids that have done amazing things in terms of turning their lives around. But I think that one of the most interesting things when I was looking at your website, just really going through what you do as an organization, was the fact at the end of all of it, your motto, I don't know if I would say it's your motto, but the ideology behind it is now pay it forward. Why is that such an important component to what you do?
I did a little brochure recently on the 5 benefits of giving. And I really stress that to possible donors and to the kids as well. You help the person that needs help, and hopefully do it in a way that motivates them rather than makes them decide I'm entitled and I'm never going to lift a finger. But beyond that, you have to realize that you get a lot out of it, and I don't think that's wrong. I used to feel guilty because I got so much pleasure out of helping people, but you don't need to. And there are physical and emotional and spiritual benefits. And there can be financial benefits as well. And actually, benefits for just expanding your own mind, knowing about a world that you might not know much about if it hasn't been in your own background.
Yeah.
I just think that it's very important that you continue to do that. And I still love that thing that I told you about where the old saying that he who saves a single life has saved the world entire. So with these kids, if they pay it forward, and then the ones they do pay it forward, the ripple effect could affect the whole world eventually,
Absolutely.
make it a better place to live for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to go back to that word hope. You know, when I think about the story that you told of the girl that was ready to take her own life. And when I hear that, and I think about now the fact that you add that final component of pay it forward, what kind of impact she could make on so many people in the future, that I think, I don't know, there's just something about that pay it forward that, and you don't hear that in a lot of organizations. I created financial literacy course about...
That's one of our ideas too.
About 9 years ago. It was called Prodigy 21, and the idea was it takes 21 days to create a habit. So it was basically basic financial literacy for kids, and it could be any age, but primarily for teens. And one of my pet peeves is that schools just don't do a real good job of getting kids ready for the real world, especially as it pertains to finance. But one of the components to that, one of the very last days and one of the last components, was the pay it forward. And so I just thought it was interesting when I was looking through your website that, there's that final component. It's like, once you've gotten to that point where you've turned your life around, whether it was homeless, foster, whatever that looks like, those are the kids that would have that turn into adults that would have the biggest impact, because their stories in themselves, to me, give hope to kids that may not otherwise have it.
Yes. Now, it's interesting. There is a little financial literacy component to our organization, too. I got one of the banks to offer them fee-less accounts. And so far, it hasn't become very big, but I'm going to work on it again. Right now, Arizona Federal Credit Union is offering bank accounts where they actually contributing $5 for the next few days of this month.
Nice.
To start it. And it gets something they have to say. And they did what I did for one of my little mentees. They're giving piggy banks. Now, when I had her, what I said to her was, I said, this will not work when you're grown up, but it's a good idea to just think of your money in sections, and they don't touch it. So I said, this piggy bank. Let's say, I used $1, then it was a while ago. So I said, okay, when you get $1 for a present, take 10 cents of it and put it in your piggy bank. Now that's for your charity and for your church. Then you come over here, take 3 dimes, spend it any way you want, have fun. Take 3 dimes and put it for something you really want that you're going to have to save for. And then I said, take 3 dimes. And she had an account and a sub-account, so she could do that. I said, take 3 dimes. And let it go towards building up a fund so that an emergency happens, because they happen to all of us, then you've got something back there.
That's right.
So that's what they're doing here, and I've got to push that element with any of the kids that I know, that whether they're my scholars or not, to get this kind of thing and start saving and just realizing some people don't know how to handle money.
That's right.
They earn something, and they think it's their money, and here they have... over here, debts more than what they've earned.
Yeah, that's right.
And it isn't your money until you got your debts paid, really.
Yeah, and just that simple concept that you just talked about, that's more than what most kids ever learn. I remember when I was a kid, I learned work ethic when I was 13. But I didn't learn how to save it. I spent every dollar I made on baseball cards. Right? That was my thing. But I didn't learn how to save. I learned how to work hard. I learned how to earn it. I didn't necessarily learn how to handle it. And just that simple thing you taught, I just think that there should be financial literacy taught in high schools.
Oh, I do too. And a few have tried,
Have they?
Yes, a few have tried.
I don't know what that means, though, try. Because
well, what I mean is they've started little bank accounts for them and having little classes for them.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that should be a semester of financial literacy, understanding money and how it works, and saving, and whatever that looks like.
In boarding school, I was taught how to write checks and do things like that.
Yeah.
They didn't teach financial literacy, but I think I sort of figured that out myself. And then I did other courses. I did the T. Harv Eker, and he was the one that said, for people that can't handle their money, take jars.
Yeah.
And when you get your check, put it in the various jars and only spend from that jar.
Right.
Now, if after a while you have some left and you need to reallocate, that's fine. But don't just go saying, oh, this is my money.
Right.
No. And another program which I want to get going is to have the kind of mentorship that I was involved with for all of my kids. Because you come back all high, but then if somebody isn't there to boost you and see you, keep it going, you start getting, slumping.
Yeah.
And so I don't want that to happen to them. I want the kind of boost, and it doesn't have to be financial. It can be just emotional and spiritual boosts that let them know that they'll have their troubles, but they'll get through them. And how about thinking about this way of looking? People don't think a lot of times. They just look at it and give up. Like my kid that said, my family never wins anything.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's got quite that mindset now.
You decided to climb to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Africa, right?
Yes. So
why? What possessed? What made you decide? And when you did it the first time, you were what? At what age were you?
I was 85.
You were 85 the first time you did. So you've done it twice.
Mm-hmm.
What made you do that? What inspired you to make that climb?
I think there were two major things that were inspirational there. When I was in high school, I read The Snows of Kilimanjaro. I was very, very much impressed with it and thought, oh, that would be lovely. But it wasn't anything on my bucket list.
Yeah.
Always, I've loved hiking. Now, I'm not a professional, not at all. But I've loved hiking and climbing. And living in New Mexico was wonderful because we went out every day and would hike the mountains. And,
yeah.
And then I continued to do that in Colorado. And actually, I've climbed in Ayers Rock in Australia and the Big Pyramid in Mexico City and lots of other places that are very interesting. But it was all just kind of dreaming. And then I had this organization and this desire to help kids, and I saw people doing things that brought in money for kids.
Yeah.
And that CEO space, a man came along that has climbed all of the 7 summits. I believe he's the oldest person to have climbed all the 7 summits. And he was starting a trip to climb Kilimanjaro. Well, my nephew and niece had said they were going to do it when I met them several years back in Colorado. And so I said to them, oh, let me do it with you. And they didn't laugh, and they said, you may. Why not?
Yeah.
Well, here comes this man. And I said, he might understand the problems of an older person. So I told them to see if they didn't want to join his group. Well, they didn't want, But I set up for it, and I actually decided, hey, I can combine 2 of my passions. I can get donations and contributions for my kids, and
yeah.
I can do something I love as well.
Yeah.
Just put them 2 together. And so I trained. I went and climbed around the mountains in Colorado, and I went up north to Flagstaff. I had a friend in the Film Society who house sits, and she got their permission to let me come up and stay so I'd have a higher altitude, and I climbed around the mountains there.
Yeah.
And I was doing all these things. Couldn't get a trainer, so I just was doing my own thing, best I could. And then I did a brochure to tell people about it and say how they could contribute. The day after I published the darn thing, the guy says, I can't go, don't get enough people, we're going to put it off a year.
Oh, no.
So there's where the pivot comes in. I said, just leave my money right there. We are going to go.
Yeah.
And then I thought, hey, I can make it even bigger because I will now be the oldest woman to climb to summit this mountain.
Okay.
So I made, when you got life gives you lemons, make lemonade, sort of, I did that sort of thing. And I got up there. And we were still working to get it all officially through Guinness, even though I was the oldest, with some woman, a Russian woman, 4 months later, or 5, something like that, was older than I.
Okay.
So I said, got to do this thing again. so I set it up to do when I was 88. I didn't want to stretch myself too far. But anyway, just about a year before I was set to go, a dentist from Colorado climbed, but it was a little older than I would be when I did it. I said, all right. I said, I'm putting off one more year. That's the end. I don't want to keep tempting fate, but I'll put it off one more year.
Yeah.
And so we worked all this Guinness stuff and got it all in. But here's the thing that happened. I hiked around, as I always do, in the mountains here. And then I got a trainer from Alliances, one of the business groups I belong to.
Uh-huh.
Scott Marsh in Tempe, and he is wonderful. I always say that he tailors your program to your age, condition, and purpose.
Okay.
Anyway, I trained with him for at least 8 months on my core strengths. I kept on doing my own thing, but I did his training.
Yeah.
And when I started being careful. I was going to jump out of an airplane, but I said, I'm not doing that because people do get hurt. I want to be whole when I go climb this mountain. And so I'm very careful. I stopped doing some of the climbs that are a little tricky, that I could slip and fall. I said, I'll keep working, but I won't do the ones that I think are especially dangerous. We got over there, and we were having a safari for about a week before we did the actual climb.
Yeah.
We went to a tent camp, and they hadn't had any rain for months. It was a dry season. And that day it rained. And I'm going down the steps, and there's a rubber mat, and I stepped on that mat and went out from under me, and I went whop, really hard down. And so I got up and I went on, and I did say to the man, I think that it would be really smart, since you do get older people sometimes, to put rails here. There were no rails whatsoever, because that's just a boost, and I always take a rail, even though I don't usually use it, just to protect myself.
Balance or whatever, yeah.
Well, and if you slipped, you got a hand to grasp.
Sure.
And so we started up the mountain, and I was doing okay. Really interesting that it's about 5 or 6 climate zones that you go through, from tropic to subarctic or something. And anyway, I started to climb, and I don't know, about maybe the 3rd day or 4th. Kevin was going with me. I said, Kevin, I am really having pain. We go to the little chapel that's run by the people that have child help. And so I said, you better say a prayer for me, and I don't need a progressive healing. I need an instant miracle.
Now, this was the first. This is the
second time.
This is the second time. Okay.
The first time I got sick one day, and I think it was probably flu that somebody brought in.
Okay.
And I crawled all that day.
So this was the second time. You were 80. This was 2 years ago. You were 89 years old.
I was 89.
Okay.
And that's when I was doing with a trainer. I didn't have a trainer the first time. I just trained myself.
Okay.
And I said to him, I am really, really, really having trouble here. And I said, if I don't keep my oxygen up, they're going to kick me off the mountain. Second time, they were careful. They tested our oxygen a couple times every day, and they didn't do it the first time at all.
Okay.
But they did the second time. And I said, I've got to. So he said some prayers for me. And I just stood there, and I said, I just have to breathe through the pain. I've got to keep oxygenated. And we got the guy up in the middle of the night and tested me, and I was okay. But I was in agony, and I just have to sit down every so often. And I said to him, he said, you can stop. I said, no, I cannot stop. Too many people are counting on me, people that want to give and people that just believe in me. I have to go on.
Yeah.
So I climbed, and I was having a really, really, really hard time. But I made it. And people posed with me along the way, and I made it. And the documentary crew's there too, and they were counting on me. So I could not do it. And going down was easier this time. It wasn't hard. So I let them give me a little arm when I came down. I wouldn't go going up. I said, no, totally my own, all myself.
Yeah.
Well, when I got home, I went to my doctor because I was still hurting like heck. It turned out I'd climbed it with 3 broken ribs.
Oh, wow. So okay, so let me do a recap of what I just heard, because that was a lot. First of all, the Guinness Book of Records has been around since 1955. Okay. It's been around for a long time. So just the fact that you did this 2 years ago at the age of 89 is pretty amazing. You trained for how long? How long the second time? How long would you say that you actually actively trained?
First of all, I don't think you can discount the fact that I keep myself up all the time. At my age, you can't afford to get sloppy. You got to keep going. And so I'm fine. I'm amazing for my age, but I wouldn't be if I didn't go out and do my exercise every single day. That's why I told you to come at 11, because I have to go out and get that exercise.
Yeah.
And so then actual training, at least I had at least 8 months, I think.
About 8 months of
core training.
Core active training and climbing in altitude and doing all those things.
Well, I'm talking what I did with him.
Yeah.
We had the elliptical machine, and we had the arm machines, and the battling ropes, and all kinds of wonderful things. He was great. I'm going back to him now, this time because I'm doing Machu Picchu, in June.
Yes.
So I think probably I'll start in January, and it'll give me several months to work hard. And meanwhile, I go out and climb every day.
So you did. This was 2 years ago, 89. You set a record in Guinness Book of World Records that has been around. Guinness Book has now been around 65, going on 70 years.
Okay.
So you set a record there, but you did it with 3 broken ribs.
But specify what it was.
Yeah.
I was not only the oldest woman to summit Mount Kilimanjaro, I was the oldest person to summit Mount Kilimanjaro. Before, they'd always kept separate records, but since I'm the younger one, they had to admit I was the oldest person there.
Yeah.
And so I did that.
The second time, I know that you do it for the kids, but the second time, was there a little bit of just that competitive edge where, like, I can't believe somebody just went and broke my record so quickly? You're like, I'm gonna go do this again.
I'm sure that's part of what I did. I did it to help the kids.
Of course.
But on the other time, yes, I am competitive.
Yeah.
I don't think of myself as that way, but I really am.
Yeah. So you have. So how has that worked as far as the organization? Were you obviously you were able to raise money? You were able to raise a lot of awareness and money. I know you just mentioned Machu Picchu coming up, so you're continuing to do this, which I'm sure is going to be a really exciting climb. That's one that I've always been really interested in. I don't think I would personally do Kilimanjaro, but Machu Picchu is definitely one I've always had an interest in. How is that? Let's talk about the ways that you actually raise money. I mean, part of it is the awareness through doing these climbs. How does all that translate into donations and money for the organization?
Doesn't translate as well as it should, because that's not my strong point. I've taken some lessons from Debbie Allen about asking for what you need, because I don't like to do that.
Yeah.
And I think probably almost entirely the money that I spent on the climbing, I got myself from my own pensions and my own savings and that kind of thing. But I wanted to do more, because there's so many scholarships I want to give, and there's so many kids that are worthy that I'd like to help.
Yes.
And so I'm hoping I can get somebody. I have somebody now that works with me, puts me up on Facebook quite a lot. And we had some things on Instagram. We had a saying that they had me, that I often open any speech with, where I'd say, let's do it currently, and say, I'm Anne, I'm 91, and I'm not done yet. And then I go on and talk about the reason I'm doing it. And so I want to find ways to really, as they say, monetize my speeches. I was just all set to start big, massive speech tour. Got my little one sheet ready and got my speeches ready and everything, and then came COVID.
Oh.
So that was hell, but I have not given that up.
Good.
I will do it. After the Machu Picchu climb, I'm going to again go out there. I still have hopefully my record.
All donations go to to a scholarship?
They go to the Creating Exciting Futures, the Larimar Child Empowerment Foundation.
Okay.
And then I have a board that decides how they're spent.
Okay.
And most of it's been for scholarships so far. Although I have paid for one business organization membership that's useful, that's given me quite a lot of money.
Good. Okay.
So we do that.
Okay.
And there's a board that I'm responsible to. Again, I want to build that board. There's just so much to do. But what I want is a manager, they call it executive director, because I want to be able to do the things I want to do, speeches and follow-up and encouragement and all that kind of thing. And I want somebody else to run the organization. Haven't got that someone yet.
How much is a typical scholarship? So if you want one scholarship for one child, give us an idea. Like what is the cost to do that?
If it were to go to the teen feast, it would usually cost around $5,000 or $6,000 because you have the airfare and you have to give them their meals and you give them. But one thing it did do, I didn't mention, once they've gone, they have membership in the parent organization for life, and nobody else can give them that unless a member. And I felt good about that because a lot of organizations out there could not give them that, and I could. So a lot of them have kept up their contacts with the older people they met there.
Yeah.
And the Film Society scholarship, we'd have to find some kind of housing for them if they came from out of state, which are the ones that are showing the most interest right now. And they have a week program for $175, and then they have another one, I think it's $375, the second week where they do even more advanced things.
Yeah.
And they'd still have to have a place to live and food to eat. And
expenses.
Mostly I get volunteers to do the work of things, like supervising them and sponsoring them and things like that.
Sure.
But it could be anywhere. Even one of the people this other gal that's so good with finding scholarships and advising kids, that maybe they're out there with a full ride scholarship, but some little emergency comes up that they need extra books or something that, there's an internship that they need for their program that's not included. Well, then I'd want to be able to help with those things as long as my board agreed.
Okay. You have, when is the Machu Picchu hike?
In June, I'm going to be up there on my 92nd birthday.
I call it a hike, but it's really a climb. It's not really a hike, is it?
Well, there's a climb to it.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I'm sorry. Say it one more time. When is it again?
It'll be in June. I'll be there on my 92nd birthday. I will be at the ruins.
All right, good. So we're going to follow you on that. And then as far as donations, obviously, again, the climbs give the awareness, but now, more people will be aware of your organization. So just go directly onto your website for donations. Is that the best way to do that?
That's an easy way to do it. Just go right to Creating Exciting Futures, and there are buttons that take you right to give an easy donation. We do run little campaigns on Facebook sometimes for our birthdays and things like that, and we get small amounts from that. Every little bit helps, because you never know what small amount can help some kid to change his life.
Yeah, and even just small. Do you have an option to do like just a one-time or a monthly? Is there like multiple options? Exactly.
If you give once, that's fine. But if you want to give more than you can give, then there is a chance to just set yourself for a recurring donation. It's set up right there on the website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Are you... what was I going to ask you? Oh, I want to make sure... Let's transition real quick. And then... so let's transition real quick. Restaurant. I just want to ask you real quick, because I like to support local. So not only do I like to support local nonprofits and charities, but I like to support local restaurants. Do you have a local restaurant that you like?
I'm going to mention two of them.
Okay.
There's La Torreta. I've been taken there for my birthday. It's up on Scottsdale near Bell.
Scottsdale and Bell, yeah. I love that place. In fact, I met the owner there about 3 months ago. I think they're getting ready to switch locations. So just so people know, if you're listening, it's going to be there for the next few months, and I think they'll switch locations. But really, really good homemade pasta there. A
lovely, lovely restaurant. And with my love of diversity, I enjoyed the waiter so much because he was Norwegian and I think African, not at all Italian, but quite a mixture. It was fun. And the other one I want to mention is Larimar, and that's on Lincoln at 32nd Street, and that's where we went for the luncheon to celebrate my climb the second time.
Okay, good.
The people that met me at the airport were there, and we went and had lunch.
Yeah.
And I've gone a number of times, and I really liked that place.
Very nice. Are you going to climb Kilimanjaro again?
Well, I have to tell you the joke about it, that when I was at the hotel after my successful summit, a guide came up to me, and he said, you beat out my client. But he said, I want my picture with you. So I said, oh, fine, we'll do it. And he said, and I'm going to take you when you're 100.
I bet you'll get really competitive. If anybody beats that record, I bet you'll get really competitive, and you'll be up there sooner rather than later.
It could happen. I don't like to be beaten. I want that record, and I earned it.
You sure did. Tell us your website one more time for donations and just more information awareness. Tell us your website one more time.
creatingexcitingfutures.org. It tells you about the climb. It gives you a chance to contribute. It gives you a chance to get involved and volunteer. It gives you a little extra information, background on me, what we've done with the organization. There's lots of really exciting information at creatingexcitingfutures.org. And the donate button is easy to use.
Anne Lorimor, I could talk to you all day, and it would just I could just keep coming up with questions, but I know you have to run. Thank you so much for taking the time with us.
It was a pleasure, and I hope to see the interview in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this show, remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and share this interview. You never know when you might change a life. If you'd like to get involved in the conversation, you can watch this full podcast episode in our Interviews with Arizonans YouTube channel and engage by liking, sharing, asking questions, and commenting on this or any other interview on YouTube. Thanks for listening to Interviews with Arizonans. Remember, keep asking questions until you get the real answers. We'll see you next time.